In the wake of the attacks on Israel by Hamas, we're hearing a lot of the Biden people and their apologists saying, in effect, Republicans bear responsibility because our government is now in chaos. Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, is holding up the appointments of the Assistant Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Assistant Secretary of this and so on. He needs to immediately drop his objections. No, he's not going to, nor should he. Or Republicans need to put Kevin McCarthy back as Speaker of the House because then we're going to have some order and we can now start approving the kind of aid and the kind of things that need to be done. No, we're not going to be doing that either. All of this is a sort of smokescreen that is being put up by the Biden people to avoid one simple fact, and that is that just a few weeks ago, the Biden regime released $6 billion to go to Iran. Now, they say this isn't taxpayer money, this is Iranian money, but it was Iranian money that was frozen under sanctions laws. This would be like there's money, there are sanctions currently against Russia, against Venezuela. When you pull back the sanctions and release the money, that's the same as giving them the money. They now have access to the money. And then you hear the Biden apologists, well, not 1 cent of that money has even been spent. It is sitting in a bank account. Well, first of all, if you give me $6 billion and I haven't spent it yet, but it's sitting in a bank account, can I borrow against it? Don't I know that that money is coming? And if I have other money of my own, I can then spend that, knowing that it will quickly be replenished. In other words, this is known in banking, in finance, as the fungibility of money. And so it's kind of amazing that here you have the Biden regime actively subsidizing Iranian terror. I mean, there's a clip from September of the Iranian leader saying, look, you're not going to tell us what we do with the money. We're going to do with the money exactly what we want to do with the money. And so even though I saw literally hundreds of posts, not 1 cent has been spent, basically the defense of the Biden apologists comes down to this. Not 1 cent of the $6 billion we gave Iran was spent on this particular act of terrorism. It's almost like they're only going to take responsibility if you show that the exact same dollar bills that were given to Iran, they used that money on the terrorism. Now, to expose the illogic of all this, imagine this. You need a new car really badly, but you can't afford one. And so your dad gives you $20,000 and says, well, listen, you can spend the money on food, on clothing, on rent, on mortgage, on utilities, but you can't spend this money on buying a car. Now, will you be able to buy the car? Yeah, probably. Why? Because you've got the same amount of money that it costs to buy you the car. You can now use your money to buy the car and use the new money that's coming in to spend on all the other things that you otherwise would have to pay for. So this is, again, the fungibility of money. And finally, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, was confronted this by NBC News, by Kristen Welker, and she said, money is fungible. What do you say to the fact that we just gave money to Iran? And then Anthony Blinken goes, Iran is unfortunately, I'm quoting him, always used and focused its funds on supporting terrorism. Boom. So here the guy breaks down and admits that, guess what? Sad to say, we bankrolled this. The United States helped this to happen. And now, when I say we bankrolled this, I'm not saying that the primary responsibility of the terrorism was not done by the terrorists. Obviously, they are the main ones. They did it. And so there's an interesting tweet put out by the Republican Accountability Project. They're like, anybody who presumes to blame the U.S. for this is itself, they are themselves the problem. Anyone whose first thought is to blame the U.S. And I'm like, no, that's actually not my first thought. But that is my second thought. In other words, my first thought is to focus on the act of terrorism itself. But pretty soon you get to other questions. What was the intelligence failure that caused this to happen? Who supplied the funds that enabled Iran to do this? And then you go, isn't it a fact that A, Biden gave them the money? True. Isn't it a fact that Iran was actively involved in the planning and helped to carry out this terrorist scheme? True. Check. And therefore, putting those two things together, our money our money, meaning the United States releasing the funds, the Biden regime letting them have the funds. And by the way, there's a little bit of a history to this that's worth pointing out. Long before Biden, Obama sent, what was it, honey, $400 million in packets, in suitcases to the Iranians. So think about it. We've been shoveling money into this terrorist regime that we know is a terrorist regime, and yet when an act of terrorism is then perpetrated with the help of these guys and with the organizational support of these guys, then you have all the Biden apologists going, no, that really wasn't us. You can't find, this reminds me of the business with COVID, where they're funding the gain of function research. And yet the moment you have an epidemic, the virus gets out, they're like, oh, you know what? You can't prove that it was really our funding. No, we only funded laboratories in America, even though those were working with Wuhan. So again and again, we find that these things have long tentacles. And in this case, the tentacles extend, sadly, to the Biden regime right here in the United States. If aches and pains are your problem, Relief Factor is your remedy. Debbie and I are proof of this. We started taking Relief Factor a couple of years ago, and what a huge difference we've seen in our joints. Nothing short of amazing. Aches and pains are totally gone thanks to this 100% drug-free solution called Relief Factor. How does it work? Relief Factor supports your body's fight against inflammation. That's the source of aches and pains. More than 1 million people have tried Relief Factor. About 70% have gone on to order more. It works for them. Works for Debbie. She can now do exercises, planks, push-ups that for several years she wasn't able to do. So Relief Factor has been a big game changer for her, her aunt, other members of our family, Mike here in the studio, and for many other people. You too can benefit. Try it for yourself. Order the 3-week quick start for the discounted price of just $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4-RELIEF to find out more about this offer. The number again, 800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. Feel the difference.